Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today it's time to have a look at another devlog for updates 1.98, and this might be one of the most interesting vehicles that is coming to War Thunder in update 1.98, mainly because of the new mechanic that it brings along. So the basics to the new mechanic for the 9P1572 Chrysanthema is basically you can fire at two targets at once. One will be radar guided and the other will be optically guided, which is definitely something which I am a little bit worried about, but not when it comes to this machine, but maybe future machines which will have a lot more usability when it comes to the game, since the Chrysanthema still does have a lot of drawbacks to it. So first of all, this is an SPG. It's coming to the Soviet tree at rank 7. It's going to be at the top of the line above the Sturm S, so it also helps out the big boy Sturm S by making it reduced modifications, which is very, very happy for me, since, you know, I don't think that machine is very good and it needs all the help that it requires. So, let's talk about the history of this machine. So, it's from the 80s, and in the 80s, the KB Maszynostrzelnia in Kolomna began work on an all-weather anti-tank missile system, which was capable of efficiently detecting and destroying ground armored vehicles, helicopters, and other units at any time of day and any visibility level. So pretty much, no matter what is going on, we can see you, we're gonna end you. The system was chosen to be mounted on the BMP-3 chassis. The reason for this is because it was mobile, it was an all-terrain platform, and also amphibious, and this is pretty much how this machine, the Chrysanthema, came to be. It became a unique unit capable of simultaneously following targets on two separate channels on its radar system and also through visual contact. And also, the radar can detect and take aim at targets at any time of day and also visibility level. This includes night, smoke, or sandstorm. So you can do anything you want to try and negate it. The only thing that's going to really negate the system is if you have something very physical between you and it, e.g. a rock. The system's missiles are also capable of penetrating tank ERA, along with over 1,000 millimeters of armor beneath it, and the Chrysanthema was put into service by the Russian army in 2004, showing this is a very modern vehicle and has since undergone modernization several times. The missile system has also been exported abroad and deployed by other countries. So this isn't just a Russian vehicle nowadays. It is also in other countries as well. So let's talk about this missile system. This is probably the most advanced missile system that we have in the game right now when it comes to ground vehicles. The missile system is as simple as this. It is a radar guided system. It uses in-game a form of radar which pretty much can track anything, at least on the dev stream that they did. They talked about the idea that it was able to spot everything on the ground and also everything in the air. When I tested it, when it came to the dev server, I was able to easily spot anything that was on the ground, even though the radar itself wasn't exactly in a great, nick, because it wasn't fully implemented at that point. But the main thing to understand is it is a ground-to-ground radar, and may have the possibilities of also being a ground-to-air radar as well, so an all-purpose radar in that sense. But from the ground-to-ground portion, this is the first time we have seen this style of radar, and it was actually scary to see. It pretty much meant that you could see targets from kilometers or miles away, which you generally wouldn't be able to see anyway. But then again, with the advent of thermals in the game, maybe people are used to that. Maybe they're used to the fact that they don't have to use their eyes anymore and they can just look at a screen, either look for the white or look for the red or the green, depending on which they pick, or just look at the radar screen and see them on that, taking away the fact that using your eyes is quite a nice skill to have in War Thunder. But the main thing from it is if we have a look at the way that the whole system worked. So you would have in front of you an angle that you would be able to aim the missiles at, and then you would lock onto a target which was in that set of angle or that cone in front of you. Then what you could do is you could optically aim the system at another target, and what this would mean is you could fire the first missile, which would track to the radar signature that you'd created, basically the radar, the radar lock that you had created, and the second one that you fired, if you fired it, while the other one was in transit, you could optically guide it to wherever you wanted to. So generally we've seen this idea of like fire and forget missiles be added to the game, over the last, few times. But mainly for helicopters, we've also got the Saddam Mistral, the Type 93 coming in for the Japanese. They are happening. When it comes to this machine, it isn't a fire and forget nature. You still have to maintain radar lock while the missile is in transit, otherwise the missile will go walkabout and won't actually hit the target. But the idea that you can simultaneously guide in a radar guided missile and also fire another one optically at another target is very, very, very crazy. It's the first time in War Thunder where you can technically fire upon two targets at the same time without having to use, the same weaponry in the form of like the same gun, shooting through a target, or with missiles in the game, getting, let's say, a combo of two hits instead of just one singular hit. So it's just crazy when you think about it. And the system that this is based on, the one that we have in War Thunder, does have its perks to it. The fact that the missiles themselves, there are two of them. It has the choice between a thermobaric warhead one, which has around 10 kilos of TNT of power in the top of it. It's a high explosive dual purpose projectile. It's very good against ERA and stuff like that. And also it can penetrate up to 1200 millimeters of armor beneath ERA. So this is going to be able to chew through everything. There was also another ATGM, which in my opinion wasn't very good. It had a lot less penetration and it just had a little bit more HE in it. So the main one to worry about is the 1200 millimeter penning one. It's, though, doesn't really have a way of dealing with anything that isn't a ground vehicle on a level plane. And this is going to be an issue for it going forward, because obviously at the higher tiers, stuff like planes and stuff like helicopters and the like exist, and since you don't have a proximity missile or anything like that, you're going to have to hit that thing dead on, and with the limited arc of fire you have when it comes to the system itself, it's going to be kind of hard to actually hit stuff which is in the air. So you're pretty much destined to go after ground units and hope that your team can deal with the air units that are about, which can definitely happen at the highest tiers of the game. Another thing to also note about this machine, it is based on the BMP-3 chassis. The BMP-3 is obviously in game with its standard turrets, and the BMP-3 chassis is nothing to really write home about. It's quite large, it's quite bulky, and it doesn't really have a lot of armor. It has a decent amount of speed though, so you will be able to get to the combat areas pretty quickly, but these missiles you can't fire on the move. So it is going to be a setup where you pretty much just go and find a place on a map, set up there, and then you're able to sit there for a while, and hopefully with your radar you can work out where the enemies are coming, and then you can literally just deal with the enemies as they come in. Now that, I think, is generally a good idea for this machine. Basically pop out your missiles above a hill and just wait for the enemies to push you, and with the fact that you have thermal imaging on your commander and also your gunner, shouldn't be too hard to spot them either. But it's still limited by the fact that it is another one of these Soviet light vehicles which gets torn apart by MBTs once it gets overrun. This machine is not survivable. This machine doesn't have a lot of crew in it. This machine is not designed to be able to tank anything. So once artillery starts raining in, once a plane or a helicopter starts coming in, or once any MBT with its thermals gets a sniff of where you are, if it can't even see you, it could probably shoot your missiles which are above you and just annihilate you as you come. And this is something that we've seen recently with stuff like M901. The M901, it was a recent change. It feels like it was the last few months, maybe a little bit more, but they made it so if you shoot the Wally turret, you can actually set off the ATGM which is in the launcher. And my guess is it'll be exactly the same for this machine to devastating effects. Once you set off that 80 gem, it'll make the whole thing blow up, because all of the 80 gems are stored under the area, so therefore it'll just go boom. So I definitely see this thing as a very much a boom and bust scenario. You know, a lot of the times you'll be able to take up very defensive positions, hold an area, use your radar to communicate to your allies where enemies are, and also use your missiles to take out a bunch of targets. I don't think there's going to be a ton of times where you can use both missiles at the same time effectively without having to, you know, actually, without having to actually expose yourself. But the thing about this system, first of all, the ground-to-ground radar system, and also this idea of being able to target different targets at once, I'm not too worried about it on this system because of all the drawbacks I've mentioned. But imagine if this system was added to a vehicle which didn't have these drawbacks. Imagine if it was, let's say, added as some form of targeting computer for a modern MBT, right, in this forming game. Now, obviously, they won't be able to replicate exactly how a targeting computer works on something, let's say, like an M1A2 SLEP, or, I don't know, the Challenger 22F that's getting added this update. But imagine if they added something similar to it, where it aimed for you, it tracked the target for you, and all you had to do is squeeze the trigger. That, to me, is where this becomes scary. Not because of the Chrysanthema, but because of the precedent that it sets for future mechanics for other vehicles. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Chris Giltnane, Conte Baraka, Daniel Stanton, Elove Goat, Jay Wilt, Martinez, Trigger Hippie, Eugens Terry, and also Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.